Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please click to subscribe. Still so many questions in the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. Was singer David involved? The LAPD has now put out their first statement, and there are some very interesting clues in that statement that I'm going to go over. Also, a big question that I have, could there have been an accomplice involved? Could someone else have helped do this to Celeste? I'm digging into all of it, all of the new information. Also, David now has a high-profile attorney. I'm going to get into exactly who she is. All of it's coming up in this episode of Brian Enton Investigates. Hey guys, it's been about a week since I last talked to you all about the investigation into murdered teen Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the 15-year-old girl whose remains were found. Just a terrible, terrible story in the trunk of singer David's Tesla. Of course, he goes by D4vd, but it's David. When I say trunk, it's actually that trunk in the front of the Tesla. You know, there's no engine. So she was found in the front of the Tesla. And while we're learning lots of new information every day, which I'll get to in a bit, because there's a lot of misinformation out there that I'm going to try to clear up. And I'm also going to try to answer the question of whether an accomplice could be involved. So I'll get to that in a little bit. But really the big question that is hanging over this case is the cause of death. That is what we still don't know all this time later. And as of today, the official thing that is on Celeste's death certificate right now, under the cause of death tab, is still deferred because they haven't been able to figure it out yet. So there's this new Los Angeles Police Department statement that has come out, and I want to read you the full thing because we've gotten such little information from the police department that I want to read this statement because it's finally something. It says, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not yet determined the cause or manner of Miss Rivas Hernandez's death. As such, it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond concealment of her body. RHD, that's the Robbery Homicide Division, is thoroughly examining every aspect of this case to uncover the truth and seek justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez and her family. So what I think is interesting, and I don't know if you guys caught that, it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond concealment of her body. Concealment of her body. So after more than 3 weeks since Celeste's body was found dismembered and decomposing in that impound lot, authorities still do not know how she died. 3 weeks later. What the medical examiner was able to determine was that Celeste was not pregnant when she died and had not been pregnant in the last year, which should hopefully, and there's been so many rumors, but hopefully that will put to rest some of the online chatter that maybe an unwanted pregnancy or something like that was a motive for someone trying to kill her. So they were able to confirm that. So this is probably a good place to remind everyone once again that David has not been arrested. It's not been charged in connection with Celeste's death. And as you may have heard in that statement from police, they do not even know if she was murdered at this point. And all the reporting suggests that the medical examiner is still waiting for toxicology results right now, which are important in all of this, especially if her body was dismembered. And they need those toxicology results to try and understand the full picture here. The reason I bring up David's standing with authorities is because there's been some new reporting from TMZ that they say that they have now actually connected Celeste Rivas Hernandez to the singer. And in the beginning, you'll remember that there were a lot of questions about whether or not Celeste's boyfriend, who we know to be named David, is actually the singer David. And there were a lot of coincidences for sure, and I've gone over them in my last video. David's leaked song called Celeste, that was one thing. Also, there were the matching tattoos. Remember, SHHH, they both had those matching tattoos. But now TMZ actually says that they talked to a friend of David that said that they knew Celeste, which is a big deal. Again, this is reporting from TMZ. And that they totally believe that David and Celeste were romantically involved, and the friend just didn't know how young she was, according to the friend, saying that they believe Celeste to be a 19-year-old college student at the University of Southern California. So I know there's a lot of new information. A lot has been coming out a little bit each day. Not a lot from police. We now have that statement, but We're getting little drips and drabs of information. But and I hate this saying, but it really does leave more questions than answers. There's still so much we don't know, especially since David has not said a word since all of this has started. And you have to wonder what he has been saying to police. Initially, we were told that he was cooperating with police. That was very early on. Where things stand now, we just don't know. Police have also been pretty tight-lipped on this. So far, not a single press conference. Think about that. All of the coverage, so much news coverage, but they haven't done a single press conference. In LA, they do press conferences. There hasn't been one here, despite the high-profile nature of the case. There was another piece of information, though, from that statement that I read to you, that I referred to earlier that caught my attention. The LAPD seems to confirm that Celeste was in the trunk of that Tesla for quite a while, and they wrote this. At this time, we can confirm that Celeste Rivas Hernandez is deceased. Her body was found in the front trunk of a Tesla belonging to David Burke. So that part we already knew, but then they say the vehicle had been parked at the location from which it was towed for several weeks. So Miss Rivas Hernandez may have been deceased for several weeks before the discovery of her body. Several weeks. Several weeks. So there's this missing persons private investigator named Steve Fisher. Took it upon himself to dig up the impound record of the Tesla from the LA Department of Transportation. He apparently knew that street parking in that neighborhood was perfectly legal, so someone must have called the Tesla in after it sat there for a while. And when you check out the pictures that came with the impound report, sure enough, the car has a layer of dirt on it, which certainly suggests it'd been there for a long time. And you guys know, like, if you leave your car out somewhere, you don't move it for a long time, you can kind of tell that it's been sitting there. There's sort of like that layer of dust on top. The complaint came into the cops. That was on about August 26th. An officer came and ticketed the car the very next day, and then ticketed it again on September 3rd before it was eventually towed. Let me see, that was on September 5th. And this is interesting. There was no mention of a strong odor until it hit the impound lot and Celeste's body was found on September 8th. The PI said the car was parked only 150 feet away from the house that David was living in, and that was the house that he rented. Well, it actually is rented by his manager for him, it seems, for $20,000 a week. The one that was raided just days after Celeste's body was found. And the reason I bring this all up is because besides the cause of Celeste's death, the timeline has been very, very difficult to pin down. David's now canceled his tour was called Withered. He's canceled his Withered tour. It began August 5th. And for a split second, an eager online sleuth thought they had actually seen Celeste in video on his tour, either August 23rd or it was August 24th, which would have helped narrow down the timeline of her death. But that video has now been debunked. So that's one of the things that's been debunked in all of this that really sort of went viral in this whole thing. The question, though, that I have is, could the tour actually give him an alibi? Because just by looking at the tour poster, which is still up on his Instagram, even though it's been canceled, you can see that David was about to be a very busy man when the tour kicked off in Del Mar, California, which is just outside San Diego. And I should point out that the poster isn't even a complete list of dates. It shows that there were shows that were added before and after the official start date between the start of his tour and the first week of September. There were only a couple of times that David had more than one day off in a row. It happened August 3rd and 4th, and then it happened again August 31st. And then I believe it happened again on September 1st. So that isn't to say that he couldn't have flown back to Hollywood on one of those days, but it would have been tough. And all of it probably would have been sort of easy to track by authorities, which I'm sure they have been. The tour, of course, doesn't provide much cover for David if Celeste's body had been in the car for more than a month. And remember, the tour began August 5th. She was found September 8th. And while police have suggested in their statement, at least in this new statement that we just got, that the body had been in the trunk for several weeks, a neighbor actually told the PI who had dug up the impound report that the Tesla had been there for more than a month, sitting out there for more than a month, before it was finally towed. Now, none of it really makes a lot of sense, whichever way you look at it. If the toxicology report comes back and we learn that Celeste died from an accidental overdose or something like that, would panic about her death combined with her young age, could that have caused someone, and I hate to use this word, but basically to chop her up, put her in the trunk of a hot car? It's hard to imagine. It's horrible, but in many ways that could be a plausible sort of reason for all of this. So if Celeste was murdered by David, and again he hasn't been charged with anything, the trunk of the hot car, not being driven for a while, just 150 feet from the home that he was staying in, you'd think that just anyone would know that's not the best hiding spot. Could someone else have killed Celeste and put her body in David's car, hoping that he takes the fall? Or could there be an accomplice in all of this? All of this remains just theories until the LAPD finally starts giving out some more answers. There's so much that we still don't know despite all the things we are learning, and I've got a feeling that authorities, for sure, must know more than they are letting on. Obviously, they gave us that very basic statement. They're waiting to officially say more until the medical examiner gives a full report. Could we never know, by the way? I'm going to get into that with my guest in a second. But surely they at least have some theories behind the scenes. Also new, we've learned that David has hired high-powered criminal defense attorney Blair Burke. She's represented Kanye West, Queen Latifah, Halle Berry, Britney Spears, and Gerard Butler, among many others. So he does now have representation, high-profile representation in the case. I'm joined now by Bobby Chacon, a former FBI agent. He's very, very familiar with the case. First of all, Bobby, I want to get your take on this new Los Angeles Police Department statement and kind of maybe you can help us read between the lines a little bit. I'm just going to read it again. It says the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not yet determined the cause or manner of Miss Rivas Hernandez's death. As such, it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond concealment of her body. RHD, which is the Robbery Homicide Division, is thoroughly examining every aspect of this case to uncover the truth and seek justice for Celeste and her family. But I guess the part that I zoomed in on, obviously, is it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond concealment of her body. What do you think is going on here with LAPD?
I think they're waiting to hear from the medical examiner exactly how this girl died, because unless they know that to a medical certainty, it's really difficult. You know, the acronym NASH is what we normally use, and that stands for natural, accidental, suicidal, or homicide. And so you can, a 15-year-old girl doesn't die from natural causes, so the N is out. Suicide is not usually done by dismemberment, so that's kind of out. So now it leaves accident or homicide. So if you think about it, if someone falls down the stairs in a home and dies from breaking their neck falling down the stairs, the homeowner isn't liable. There's no criminal culpability for a homeowner in that situation. Now, if they cut up the body and put it in the trunk of a car, they're liable for the moving of the body, and that's what they allude to in that statement, other than putting it in the trunk. Someone is criminally culpable for hiding that body in that car. Backing up from that, how the person died needs to be established before we can say someone is criminally culpable for homicide, because we just don't know yet because of the state that that poor young woman's body was found in.
Could they be trying to trick David in a way with the statement and make him think that they, don't think it was murder when they
I
actually do?
mean, yeah, that's a possibility, but I think that they've spoken to David at length, either on his own or with his attorney present. And I think that they've spoken to the people around him in his life. I think they have a pretty clear picture of what was going on with this relationship between him and the young girl. And so I think they've spoken to her family. I think they've done a lot of the kind of the, pure detective work that is done in a case like this, the interviews, the hundreds of interviews with people around the situation to see what was going on in this relationship at the time that she went missing. And so they could, obviously he's always going to be a person of interest if anyone would be if a body is found, dismembered in your car. The person whose car that is going to be a person of interest. And so I think that that's the starting point, and they're doing as much as they can to prepare for the time when they have a, kind of a determination of how this girl died. Because if they don't, if they don't come up with that, if the medical examiner can't say for certain that this was a homicide, then it's a very, very difficult case to make.
In terms of concealment, I mean, they mentioned concealment of her body. I mean, that's still very serious, right? I mean, even if,
Yeah,
I mean, who
yeah,
does that? Who like chops someone up? I mean, I hate to say it like that, but put, you know what I mean? Even if it wasn't
yeah.
murder.
And we've seen cases before where the person is charged with that, and then later they're charged with the homicide because there's more definitive proof that the person hid the body or got rid of the body or whatever in other cases. And so you do sometimes find someone charged with that, and then later on the charges are upgraded to murder because other things are developed through the investigation. Um, but yeah, there's always somebody committed a crime here. The crime that we know for sure happened is someone obviously dismembered her, which is, abuse of a corpse, and then someone hid the body in that car, which is a hiding of a corpse. So those are criminal acts. So there are, that's why the police department said beyond the hiding of the body in the car, we don't know if there's criminal culpability because there is certainly a crime has been committed with that part of it. They don't know who did that yet, obviously, or you would think they would charge somebody with it. But beyond that, whether or not there's going to be a homicide is yet to be determined because of the state of the which that body was found.
What do you think about Celeste's parents from what you know? I mean, TMZ reported that she told a friend that her parents could be mean and she didn't like being around the house. I think that's what she said. Um, is it strange to you that the parents haven't spoken out, or are they perhaps being told to stay quiet?
Yeah, I mean, they were quiet during the time she was missing. I mean, they went to the police a couple of times to report her missing, but they certainly didn't. At least I didn't see, and I don't live far from where she disappeared from. I didn't see like appeals to the public. I didn't see them go on the news and say, "Please, if anyone's seen our daughter." But apparently, there was. I read a report of an old friend of hers, a young man who said that she confided in him that the mom didn't treat her too well. She'd run away. She'd rather be somewhere else, and that maybe someday she would just disappear. Of course, now he feels somewhat guilty in the reporting that I read that that he didn't do more to help her in her situation. So there may be some type of abusive situation in her home life by the parents that make the parents a little hesitant to get too involved. I don't know. That's speculation on my part, but I'm sure the police have looked into that.
And also the manager, David's manager, he put out a statement. I'm going to read it to you. It's kind of long, but it says, this is from John Marshall, the manager. This video is false and the person is misinformed. This is in terms of talking about the video of when I think they thought that Celeste was at the concert. This is the only time I'll speak on this matter for now. This has been a tough time for my family. I'm a father of three children. I received no emails and I'm no one's roommate. I live full time at home with my wife and kids. My daughter is 14, and this news is affecting so many lives. I had zero knowledge of anything, and I don't live in California. Also, I work remotely 95% of the time. My job doesn't require me to have much interaction with any of my clients. Slash David, is there any, as there are many others that work with him on a day-to-day capacity, not me. This news is tragic for so many and for her family. I hope that proper authorities get to the bottom of it soon. Let me remind people a lot of this speculation and is alleged. In the meantime, I am with my family helping them emotionally get through the news of this tragedy. Please report only factual information. But I think in a separate post, he also said that he didn't know Celeste or didn't know that, if they were boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think he's telling the truth?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's no reason to not believe what he's saying. And I think, I know a lot of agents and managers who do that. They have a lot of clients. He might not have been his biggest client. And so what he does for them is he puts his names on the lease. Say, for example, we know the lease of that house where David was living was in Mr. Marshall's name. So, they do things like that are more administrative for reasons of the celebrity client doesn't want to be listed on the lease or on a hotel reservation or things like that, because then that brings attention to them, and that's the last thing they want at the place they're living. And so, that's a pretty routine function that somebody in his position would fulfill. And so now, because this young girl may have been staying there or may have been there before she died or was killed, now his name is thrust front and center. for a lot of speculation on social media. But he may be telling the truth. He may, David may not be his biggest client. He may have just simply put his name on the lease as a, as that's part of his function as an agent, to shield his client from that kind of attention. And so, but people see his name on the lease and think, he was there every day or he lived there part of the time, and that's may not necessarily be the case.
And just back, I was thinking about what you said earlier. Do you think there's a chance that they may not be able to determine the cause of death? Is that a real chance in this case?
I unfortunately I think that's a real possibility for a number of reasons. The dismemberment obviously sometimes helps hide the cause and manner of death. The decomposition of the body. That car was reported there at least a couple of weeks sitting on that street, and I don't think anybody put the body in it while it was on that street. I think the body was probably put in there in another location that was more private, and then it was kind of parked on that street. My own theory is somebody was tasked with getting in that car and driving it away and hiding that body somewhere else, and for some reason didn't wasn't able to carry out that task. Um, and uh, and so I think the decomposition. We were in summer, late summer here in Los Angeles, and so I think that the weather and her being locked in that trunk could cause some decomposition that could further complicate the determination of whether or not this is a homicide. And so I think the medical examiner, they've already released the body back to her family. They've done all they could, and now they're just waiting on basically laboratory examinations to come back. Once they have those in hand, they're going to know everything they can possibly know, and that's when we'll hear about a determination.
Can they charge someone with murder if that medical examiner doesn't rule it a homicide?
Technically, legally, yes. But just think of a defense attorney getting his hands on that and putting the medical examiner up on the stand and say, "Can you definitively say this was even a homicide?" And the medical examiner saying no. I mean, there's your reasonable doubt right there. So, it's very unlikely that you would charge somebody in that situation.
And just lastly, we talked last time about sort of the social media frenzy around this case. Some of it I think was helpful in terms of people looking at videos and photos and trying to see if anything existed between David and Celeste. I mean, what do you think now? I mean, there's been so many rumors now since we last talked. Where do you think stand on that front?
Well, I think the police know. I think they've talked to David enough and they've talked to enough of the people around them. They probably have a pretty clear account of what this relationship was and what it was like. And so, based on that, based on their feeling of that, and all those interviews that they did with anybody they could possibly talk to and was willing to talk to them about it, have a pretty clear picture of what it was, and they're probably you know focusing their investigation based on that, based on what this situation looked like to them. Unfortunately, we don't know, but they probably do, and they're probably directing their investigation either towards David or away from David based on the picture that has been created, through the investigation thus far.
Is it possible, do you think, that there could be an accomplice in this whole thing?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't have any reason to believe that, but I do think it's a possibility here because, sometimes these entertainers have kind of a entourage that kind of follows them around. They have people that do certain things for them, get them food, get them clothes, whatever that be. The mundane tasks, sometimes not so mundane. And so, I think that it is possible that someone was tasked with, parking that car there, then going back and getting it and moving it again and possibly disposing of the body somewhere else. I can't think that they wanted that body found in that trunk in his car down the street from where he was staying. That to me is a huge problem for him. And so I don't think that that's what they wanted. So I think that either he was going to move the car himself or someone that he tasked with that was supposed to move that car. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Yeah, I think what they're going to try to do is they know how long the car was there, so they can kind of work from that date or that general date and back. And the one good thing is that as an entertainer, David's schedule is pretty well known. If he's on the road, that can be verified, where he's staying, concerts he's held. When he's back home, that's a little less verifiable, but when he's home, when he's not on the road. And so you kind of have a good idea. And so you start looking at, well, was he on the road? Now, well, he was on the road when the car was found. They can probably verify that. But if they back date it and say, okay, that car was there for this month, at this point in time. Was he back home? Had he started his tour or not? And then you start looking through your electronic evidence, like his pagers and like his phone activity, and not pagers, excuse me, but like his phone activity and his computer activity and things like that. You can know an IP address, where he was searching things from, where his phone was being used from, and things like that. And maybe even in that neighborhood, which is very, very expensive homes, security video cameras from neighbors, things like that. Do you see people coming and going from that house from an adjacent neighbor or things like that? So they're trying to build a timeline of where he was based around the time they think that car was
Mhm.
parked there with the body when it first got into the place where they found it several weeks later.